Welcome to the Faith and Feelings podcast. My name is Taylor Joy, and I'm passionate about helping you untangle and honor your emotions, authentically practice your faith, and integrate both into your everyday life so that you can experience the goodness and delight that comes from living in relationship with yourself, God, and others. Thank you for joining me. Let's get started. In the winter of 2019, I finally had some margin in my life to start considering an idea that had been swirling in my mind for a few years. I was 20, a sophomore in college, and home for Christmas break. The previous few years had been incredibly painful. The summer before my freshman year, I had spent 2.5 months in residential treatment for anxiety and an eating disorder. My recovery journey had been slow, deliberate, and required enormous amounts of intentional, conscious energy. During that time, I had filled hundreds of journal pages, and somewhere in the midst of all of this reflection, a book idea began to take shape. That evolving idea eventually became my book, Stop Saying I'm Fine, Finding Stillness When Anxiety Screams, which was published 3 years ago this week. So today, I wanted to take you behind the scenes to the story of how this book came into the world. Before the winter of 2019, I had explored this idea, but what I had learned was that although it was a good idea, it wasn't yet fully formed. It needed time to sit in the dark, to grow some roots, and to develop more depth. It needed years, and to be honest, I was discouraged at the time. But I decided that the idea was worth the wait. So I continued to work on it here and there with the understanding that it was going to be a while. Sometimes that's just how things go. Even though you want to, it isn't quite time. The reality is that the work of healing, much like the work of writing, is long and layered. The road is winding and dark, and even the next right step is not always clear. But that winter, as I paid closer attention to what I was reflecting on and journaling about my own healing, I began to sense that it was time to begin. Even though I didn't fully know what the book was about, even though I wasn't sure I was ready, even though you may not feel ready, it may still be time. During that Christmas break, my family was living in Thailand, and my mom and I spent hours wandering the streets and markets of Chiang Mai, talking through a half-formed book idea. It was in those long conversations that the first threads of Stop Saying I'm Fine began to take shape. A few weeks later, I flew back to Virginia for the spring semester, and one morning at 3 a.m., I was sitting on the bathroom floor, jet-lagged and with my phone in hand, calling my mom on the other side of the world. I remember whispering as we talked, trying not to wake up my roommate. She had just watched the newest Little Women movie and told me she couldn't stop thinking about me as she watched Joe write. She saw in me the same love of writing and the same creative hunger for words. And then she said, and I will never forget the following sentence, I have a word for you. Write. Sitting there on the bathroom floor at 3 a.m., I felt it too. Even though I was still unsure, I knew it was time to begin writing. Writing a book isn't glamorous. It's messy, uncertain, and often filled with doubt. There were many early mornings and late nights where I thought, is this all trash? Is this all a mistake? Should I just give up? The process was deeply reflective and painfully slow. Yet I began to notice that my writing mirrored my healing. Both were evolving, messy, and nonlinear, and I was learning to trust the process of both. I love how writer and editor Stephanie Duncan Smith describes writing as a profound practice of spiritual formation. And that's exactly what Stop Saying I'm Fine became for me. The words came from a deeply contemplative place, from where, as Psalm 42:7 describes, deep calls to deep. I was writing from the place where I was being formed. I believe that writing can be a profoundly spiritual practice because it demands your whole self, body, mind, and soul. It demands all of you, your whole person. And it doesn't really matter what you're writing about. This is true whether you're writing a deeply personal memoir or an academic work that has zero first person at all. There might be different shades of experiences there for sure, but writing is deeply personal because it requires the fullness of your attention and your experience of all the senses. I think that the fullness of a book's potential emerges from a kind of spiritual communion between the soul of a writer and the Spirit of God, which extends to a similar kind of communion between the writer and reader. And because the writing process requires so much of you, it can be angsty. It stirs up so many insecurities, questions, and doubts. Writing becomes the place where you grapple with all of those things. And I believe that God meets us there in that process. He met me. So as I chose to stay awake to God and to my own soul as I wrote, I was also stretching the creative muscles that were forming me into more of the person I wanted to be. Writing often uses the same muscles as healing, inviting us to become the kind of person who pushes back against resistance and shows up to tell the whole truth. I wrote most of Stop Saying I'm Fine in 2020, during those quiet, long months of COVID. I rewrote chapters over and over, allowing the words to emerge slowly and find their place. I wanted this book to be a portable place of presence, carrying the heart of someone in pain. I wanted readers to feel that their wounds were being witnessed and their stories held with tenderness and care as they read my story. And I wanted readers to feel seen, not just understood. That fall, when I went back to school to start my junior year, the words were coming slowly and steadily, but I still had two problems. Number one, I didn't actually know what the book was about, or at least I didn't yet understand how all the pieces fit together. And number two, when it came to the publishing side of things, I had no idea what I was doing. I didn't know how to navigate the publishing world, and I had no idea what a book proposal was or even how to write one. So in the fall of 2020, I applied completely on a whim and with no expectation of being selected for a 6-month writing intensive with New York Times bestselling author Lisa TerKeurst. There were 800 applicants and 100 were accepted. To my complete shock, I was accepted into the intensive. 2 book contracts were given to participants at the end, and I wasn't selected. I was really disappointed, but I kept writing, and I kept waiting. The following summer, I interned with bestselling author Tracy Miles. She mentored me through refining my book proposal in exchange for some help with social media and graphic design for her upcoming book launch. During one of our Zoom calls, I remember her holding up some early chapters of Stop Saying I'm Fine with tears in her eyes and saying, "Taylor, this book is about anxiety." I think back about that moment and laugh now. Sometimes you're so close to something that you need someone to point out the obvious, and Tracy was that person for me. Moving forward, I'll skip over some of the behind-the-scenes publishing details to say that I eventually signed with Leafwood Publishers, with the book set to release in the fall of 2022, 3 years after the idea first began to take shape. Although I share a lot of my own story in the book, Stop Saying I'm Fine was never meant to be about me. I wanted to go first, to tell the truth about the nonlinear, messy, present, and still ongoing process of my own healing journey. I remember sitting down to read through the final draft before it went to print, and I was feeling so much anxiety and self-doubt. I didn't know if the book would resonate with anyone. I felt too young and too not healed enough. I still didn't really know what I was doing. But that evening, I opened to the first chapter and began to read the opening paragraph. And this is what I read. I sat on gray tiled floor and stared numbly at the tiny sliver of light through the crack of the bathroom floor. The darkness around me and in me felt so heavy, like the feel of gravity when you're falling, dragging you lower and lower at a frightening rate, and the only direction you can see is down. Inwardly frozen, I focused every ounce of mental capacity I had left to draw the next lungful of air. Breathe. Just breathe. Legs tucked up to my chest, I wrapped my arms around my knees. Fists clenched and knuckles white, I willed myself to inhale. 1, 2, 3, and then a long, shaky exhale. It hit me as I read. The book opens where it all began, the bathroom floor. There was a strange tenderness in that realization, almost sacred in its symmetry. I had wrestled for a long time with how to begin Stop Saying I'm Fine. And finally, I had decided to start with a moment of profound shame and isolation. And somehow, by God's kindness, that same space on a different bathroom floor became the seed of a story that would let me sit with others in their own darkness and offer hope. Since Stop Saying I'm Fine released, the book has taken on a life of its own. I've spoken at conferences, been interviewed on podcasts, and seen the book used in counseling centers and treatment facilities across the country. The messages I've received have been incredible. Since the release of Stop Saying I'm Fine, readers have reached out to share how the book has touched their lives in ways I never imagined. Some have shared that it gave them the courage to seek help. One reader messaged me, "You don't know me, but I wanted to reach out and personally thank you. I read your book, Stop Saying I'm Fine, twice, and I actually just spent 12 weeks this summer in my own residential treatment program in Georgia and wouldn't have received much needed healing without reading your story first." Parents have told me how the book helped them understand their children and themselves more deeply. One woman messaged me this, "I read your book, Stop Saying I'm Fine, and just wanted to let you know how much I appreciated your book. I cried through it and so much of it resonated with me. I am now going back to reread parts and try to apply it to my everyday life. I've also been sharing parts with my son, who's in a dark place. So thank you for writing this book." And recently, a couple emailed me this. "I read your book aloud so that my husband and I could read it and discuss it together. I can't tell you how much your book has meant to us. With great courage, honesty, and humanity, you share what it feels like to struggle with anxiety. You gave us a window into your struggle and, by extension, our daughter's life." And finally, others have told me that the book put words to their experiences in ways that they haven't been able to articulate. One reader messaged me this, "I finally started going to counseling, and your book has been a constant companion on this journey. I've read it repeatedly. Your book is just laced with reminders that God calls us to live a life filled with color, even when it also has pain, and that we don't have to approach Him from a spirit of fear. I am sure I'm not the only person who needs to be reminded that we can't get it right on our own, and He loves us and is gentle with us. I write all this because I just wanted to say thank you so much for writing your story so honestly. The church needs this. Your willingness to talk about how complicated the intersection of the biological, emotional, physiological, and spiritual are, and how much work it takes and honesty it takes to get better is so, so brave. Every message like this fills me with a gratitude I can't fully put into words. They encourage me, humble me, and remind me why I do this work. So to wrap up this episode, I wanted to share one last story. A few weeks ago, a painter reached out to me. She had created artwork inspired by Stop Saying I'm Fine, layering pages of the book between layers of paint. When I opened the link, I was absolutely stunned. It was so moving. pain and beauty intermingled. And that is exactly what I wanted the book to do, to invite people to turn tenderly towards their pain and to wait for the beauty that can emerge there too. I'm including a picture of the painting in this week's Substack if you'd like to see it. You can subscribe through the link in the show notes. But this beautiful, creative work reminds me of the gift of vulnerability. Words have power, stories have power, and even one small book can reach far beyond what I ever imagined. This book has and continues to teach me so much. And just like that painting inspired by the book, it has reminded me that pain and beauty are often interwoven. I'm learning to hold the tension of both. Writing has taught me about humility, persistence, and the power of presence. It's taught me that the act of writing itself can be a form of healing for both the writer and the reader alike. I'm so grateful that you listened to today's episode. Thank you for spending time with me. I'd love to hear from you. Connect with me on Instagram at TaylorJoy or through my website, taylorjoymurray.co. Also, if you enjoyed this conversation, it would mean so much to me if you took a minute to subscribe and review the podcast. This is an easy way to partner with me and is invaluable in reaching new listeners. Until next week.